In 2003, a team of 4 men, all of whom never knew each other before, came together to commit one crime, one robbery. A heist so big that it would set them for life, but only if all things went according to plan. At first, it seemed impossible, and that's because it was. Yet, they were determined. It was going to be the biggest diamond heist in history. This is the story of a fake gem dealer and a team of professionals who did the impossible and shocked the world in just 27 seconds. A couple of years before the robbery, a man named Leonardo Notarbartolo rented a furnished office in the heart of the Antwerp World Diamond Center. He used this property as proof that he was a gem dealer from Italy who came there to expand his business. This office also gave him access to a safety deposit box inside the diamond vault, located 2 floors beneath the diamond center. For quite some time, Notarbartolo used the office daily, only to establish a routine in the eyes of everyone else who worked in the area. He wasn't a gem dealer at all, and the only reason he wanted to rent this office was to gain access to the Diamond Center building. It was impossible to get in unless you had a tenant ID, and Notarbartolo got it through the rental office. Notarbartolo was always a thief. At the age of 6, he robbed the local milk store after he found that the salesman was sleeping. This wasn't the first time he got a taste of true adrenaline and how it felt to do something that wasn't allowed. Obviously, he was just a kid back then and got his butt smacked by his mother for stealing. But by then, he had already made up his mind. Thieving was his calling, and ever since then, Notarbartolo started targeting everything he could get his hands on. As an elementary school student, he often picked his teachers' purses, taking out whatever cash he could get. He also started boosting cars as he grew up and learned picking locks, which eventually led him to hit bigger scores. Yet, he wasn't getting the big break he dreamed of. Feeling like a failure and tired of being broke, he decided that it was time to level up. He had to hit just 1 score to satisfy that craving, feel that adrenaline rush that he felt the first time all those years ago, and be rich. He had nothing in his pocket, so any amount above a few $100 would have made him happy. So he thought about a target, long and hard. Banks, luxury stores, hotels, and countless other options came to his mind, but he couldn't decide. It was a dangerous thing to do, and he was still pretty young. If he was caught, the prime of his life would be spent behind bars, locked up with the worst of the worst. Notarbartolo wasn't a hardened criminal anyway. He just loved the thrill of thieving, taking control of what wasn't his, and enjoying the dopamine rush. And this was his biggest weakness too. This never-ending love of chasing that feeling kept pushing him to try new things, explore different avenues, and keep stealing. One day, he decided that the best way of getting rich quickly was to hit a jewelry store. A small gemstone, a couple of pieces of jewelry, or 1 nice diamond could be worth at least a few thousand. At the time, this thought alone was enough to motivate him. So, he set on this new mission of finding a jewelry store that would be an easy target. Every store was packed with guards, CCTV cameras, and top-notch security measures, all of which only increased the risk for Notarbartolo. Yet, he was so determined that he found a way around this hurdle. He started following a local jewelry salesman in Italy who was going to be his next target. For weeks he followed him, understanding his everyday routine, remembering his route, and carefully calculating all the risks. This wasn't going to be easy at all. Obviously, as a jewelry salesman, he had people looking after him. Nonetheless, Notarbartolo decided to make his move and follow him into the store. As soon as he entered, he started threatening the salesman, asking him to stay quiet while he looted the place. That day, he walked away with a good bunch of precious stones, jewelry, and diamonds. This was the first time his plan worked smooth as butter, and that only motivated him further. Once again, his desperation for this thrill only increased, and he went on to commit yet another heist a few years later. The only difference was that this time, he didn't create an opportunity. The opportunity found him. On a random workday, he was sitting in a coffee shop in Antwerp, Belgium. This was where he had rented the office. He went there regularly to establish a routine and also kept a few jewels and cash that he had stolen in a safety deposit box in the Diamond District vault. After all, he had access to it, and what better place to store stolen jewelry than in the safest vault on Earth? So, while sipping his freshly brewed coffee, a Jewish gentleman who remains unnamed to this day approached him. He sat on the chair opposite to Notarbartolo and made him an insane offer. An answer to one question for 100,000 euros. At first, Notarbartolo was shocked. Who could offer such an insane amount for just one answer? What is this question? Why did he choose me? And a million other questions rushed his mind. He finally asked the question: could the Antwerp Diamond Center vault be robbed? Notarbartolo's face instantly went into poker face mode. He had no idea what to respond with because nobody had ever asked him this question. After a few seconds of awkward silence, he finally mustered up the courage to reply, "No." That's all he said, because that was the only logical response to this question. It was the most secure vault in the world, holding hundreds of millions of dollars worth of gems, jewelry, and cash. The person who would try something like this would have to be completely out of his mind. This was because the Antwerp Diamond Vault wasn't like any other random bank vault. It was a one-of-a-kind masterpiece with all the latest technology built in to make it completely break-in proof. The first hurdle was its location. The vault was securely placed 2 floors beneath the Diamond Center building. The floor just above it was filled with security guards who had one job: protecting the vault at all costs. Also, the entire vault was covered with an invisible magnetic field that would trip a security alarm if anyone even came close to the door. The door had a lock that could have over 100 million possible code combinations and also required a master key to unlock. This master key was a foot long and a one-of-one model, which was impossible to replicate. Inside the vault that seemed more like a fortress, there were CCTV cameras recording every inch of every wall. Heat detectors, Doppler radars, and a bunch of other sensors were placed everywhere that would instantly trip the alarm if a slight vibration, movement, or sound was detected. In simple words, it was impossible to break in without having an inside man. Notarbartolo told him that since he had access to the vault, he'd use his discreet pen camera to take pictures of everything, from the entry of the building to inside the vault, and show him just how dangerous and impossible this task was. A few days later, Notarbartolo went inside the vault with his little camera and took around 100 pictures of everything. The guards, the door, safety deposit boxes, sensor locations, and even the CCTV cameras. This was a big risk that he took, but the thought of robbing Antwerp Diamond District's vault was just too exciting for him. He brought these pictures back to the Jewish man, showing him every single shot and explaining them in detail. When he showed the picture of the vault's door, Notarbartolo explained that this was a 3-ton steel door that was impossible to break into. Even if someone thought of using a drill to get inside, it would take 12 hours of constant drilling. Plus, a bunch of sensors would trip the alarm before anyone even had time to take out the drill. Hearing everything and realizing that his dream may have been shattered to pieces, the Jewish man got up and left. Notarbartolo kept thinking about this interaction for weeks because it was the most insane conversation he ever had in his thieving career. Eventually, the thought faded away, and he went back to posing as a fake gem expert in the Diamond District. Then, 5 months after the first meeting with the Jewish man, Notarbartolo's phone rang. He was getting a call from a blocked number, which was completely unusual for him. He picked up the phone, and on the other side, a familiar voice spoke. For a few seconds, he thought about who this could be. Was this a friend? The police? Or someone who just wanted to spook him? Well, it was none of those people. In fact, it was that Jewish man he met all those months ago. As soon as he realized this, the voice told Notarbartolo to meet him at a location he would get through SMS. He knew that it would be something crazy related to the impossible robbery, but just to humor himself, he decided to take a road trip and meet him at the specified place. After a few hours of driving, Notarbartolo reached an abandoned warehouse. Just outside the gate, the Jewish man stood there, waiting to welcome him. When he saw him, Notarbartolo let out an instant sigh of relief. But this sigh came a bit too early. Notarbartolo still had no idea what to expect from this short-notice meeting. After greeting the Jewish man, they walked inside the warehouse and saw a tent covered in black tarps. Something was obviously hidden underneath it, but Notarbartolo didn't know what it was. As they walked inside, he saw 3 Italian men sitting there in classy outfits, waiting for him to arrive. The Jewish man and Notarbartolo took a seat and began discussing what the meeting was about. Wasting no time, the 3 men took away the black tarp like a cover from a brand new car. Underneath it hid one of the most amazing, fascinating, and frankly, mind-blowing things ever. It was an exact replica of the Antwerp Diamond District Vault, a monstrosity that seemed impossible to replicate under any circumstances. Notarbartolo realized that these men weren't just joking around. They were seriously planning on stealing everything from the most secure vault on Earth. At first, this thought was insane. It was more of a suicide mission, because there was no way these guys could bypass the security guards, the sensors, open the gate, take the loot, and walk out free. It simply wasn't going to happen. However, when the 3 unnamed men introduced themselves, Notarbartolo's mind began to change. The first man was named Genius, an alarm system expert who could disable any alarm easily. Secondly, there was the Monster, a big guy who was considered to be a master of everything. And lastly, there was this old man who went by the nickname King of Keys. He was an expert in keys, and said that if he could get a picture of the master key to the vault, he could easily replicate it. At this point, all Notarbartolo had to do was say yes to the plan, and the heist was on. Obviously, greed took over, and in the heat of the moment, he agreed to the plan. So, on the 14th of February, just one day before the heist went down, Notarbartolo entered the vault to complete the first step of the plan. His entry wasn't suspicious because the guards were used to seeing him come and go for whatever he had stored inside. What they didn't know was that Notarbartolo had completely different plans this time around. He sneaked in a small can of women's hairspray, which he used on the heat and motion sensor. The oily layer of hairspray messed up the sensors, and their ability to detect even the slightest change was hampered. His job was done, and the next steps were based on teamwork. Late at night, Notarbartolo and the team hopped in a red Peugeot 307 and drove straight to the vault building. The entire area was silent, and only the police station was open. So, Notarbartolo drove the car to the building and dropped off the 3 Italian men, along with his lifelong friend Speedy, on the sidewalk. The game was on. Notarbartolo went away to park the car in a nearby street as the team made their way into a nearby rundown building. They had large black duffel bags with them to collect everything they got their hands on. Thankfully, the Genius already kept a ladder here, which they used to climb up on the terrace on the 2nd floor. He then used a small polyester sheet to cover the motion sensor on the window so they could get into the building undetected. And just like that, they were inside. Only a few more hurdles, checkpoints, armed guards, and a truckload of sensors to go through, and then they'll be millionaires. Using the main stairwell, the team made their way to the vault beneath the ground. They used black plastic bags to cover all cameras while staying hidden, and then turned on the lights. The Genius approached the vault door with sparkles in his eyes, and he immediately got to work. The Genius pulled out a slab of aluminium and used double-sided tape to fix it to the two metal plates on the vault door. These plates regulated the magnetic field, and the slab disturbed it, making their way into the vault of their dreams easier. He unscrewed every visible bolt that held the magnetic plates, and once they were removed, he stuck them to the wall using double-sided tape. This way, the magnetic field was still alive, just not on the vault door. The King of Keys started his job on this cue and began finishing the foot-long key. At this point, he immediately remembered something out of the ordinary he saw in all the key videos that Notarbartolo had recorded. Every time the guards came to the vault, they entered a utility room and then opened the vault. Curious to see what that was about, all of them made their way into this utility room, only to find the original key to the vault. Notarbartolo also managed to record the original code through one of his videos, so the king slid the key into the door while the genius added the lock combination. Immediately, they heard some noises. Some clicks, some metal banging, and everything that sounded like a massive lock was opening. Finally, they had internal access to the vault. Now, the entire plan was dependent on the monster. If he could slowly move in and extend his arms to move the ceiling and expose the sensor wires, another massive milestone would be achieved. To do this, he had to take control of his heavy breathing and move extremely slowly. As he moved the ceiling and started cutting the sensor wires, everyone held their breaths. This was the defining moment of the heist. One wrong move, and the biggest robbery in the world would turn into the biggest tragedy for them. Thankfully, Monster controlled his movements and reconnected the sensor wires, which disabled any communication between the sensors and the security room. Immediately, all four of them moved in and reached for the safety deposit boxes. The King of Keys used a small hand drill to disengage the locks, and within seconds they had access to the jewels, gems, and cash hidden inside. Within seconds, they cleared out 123 out of 189 safety deposit boxes. Everything they stole was worth over $100 million, especially since a brand new shipment of De Beers diamonds had also just come into the vault. At 5:30 a.m. on the 16th of February 2003, all four left with the hefty bags and headed toward the car where Notarbartolo was waiting for them. It took them an hour to carry the bags from the vault to the rundown office building from where they entered, yet they managed to make it. The only thing left to do was load everything in the car, drive to Notarbartolo's apartment, and let the reality sink in that they had just committed the biggest robbery in history. As soon as they reached the apartment, all five of them sat there, celebrating and eating salami sandwiches. Their job was done, and no one suspected a thing. Before anyone would realize that the vault had been nearly emptied, all of them would be long gone. What they didn't know was that a huge surprise was waiting for them, and it wasn't going to be a pleasant one. When the team decided to open the bags and check the loot, they went in a state of shock. There was only jewelry, small diamonds, and some cash, but not a single one of the De Beers diamonds. Those were the ones worth the most, and without them, the entire loot was hardly worth $20 million. The team couldn't have done it, because the entire heist took place in front of their eyes. Therefore, the only person left was the one not there, the Jewish man who came up with this plan. Notarbartolo said that he must have worked with other investors and people who had access to the vault to take out the diamonds beforehand. When asked why, he said that the only possible explanation would be that the Jewish man wanted to run an insurance scam. Thinking about how they all were left cheated and betrayed, the team decided to collect their shares from whatever they had and go their separate ways. The police were going to start looking for them in just a few hours, and that was all the time they had to disappear. Notarbartolo and Speedy chose to take the rental car and drive down the frozen highway. They kept a huge black trash bag in the back seat, which had all the plans related to the heist, the video recordings taken by Notarbartolo's pen camera, and tons of evidence that needed to be destroyed. While driving, they stopped in the middle of a pitch-black dirt road on the side of the highway to throw and burn away all the evidence. By this time, Speedy was already having a full-blown panic attack. He was paranoid and thought that they would all get caught. Thankfully, Notarbartolo kept his cool and found a small hidden shed where they could burn the evidence. Unfortunately, the biggest mistake he made was leaving Speedy alone in the car with the evidence and the loot while he went out to look for a secure spot. Once he came back, he saw Speedy walking outside with the black trash bag on the ground. Everything was on the dirt road. Diamonds, papers, broken tapes, pictures and whatnot. Notarbartolo panicked, thinking that there was no way they could pick up all of the diamonds and evidence. It was pitch black too, so even if they tried, there was no way they could find all the evidence that Speedy had thrown away in panic. Although Notarbartolo tried to collect as much trash as he could, they just didn't have time to burn it all. Short on time, they decided to throw away piles of it in random places, hoping that if anyone saw them, they'd think it was random garbage. Little did they know, this would be a grave mistake. The very next day, a local hunter who owned the land found these garbage piles everywhere and also saw the burnt ashes of Notarbartolo's evidence. He immediately called the police, worried that this might be evidence related to the robbery that was all over the news. When the police examined everything, they found a half-eaten piece of the salami sandwich. They managed to get a DNA sample from this sandwich and matched it to Notarbartolo. He wasn't hard to find, since he already had a criminal record back in Italy. A few days later, the police tracked him through CCTV footage from a nearby grocery store from where he had purchased the sandwich. The police identified the shop from a receipt they found in the garbage piles. That was it for Notarbartolo. He was later arrested and tried in Antwerp, where he was awarded a 10-year prison sentence. Although he was released on parole in 2009, the police arrested him once again in 2013 when he was found violating the terms of his parole. In 2017, he was released from prison after serving the remainder of his sentence, and today, he is a free man. Yet his legacy as the only man who committed the impossible heist carries on. Scott Andrew and Greg Campbell wrote an entire book on this heist called Flawless, Inside the Largest Diamond Heist in History. Recently, an Amazon TV series called Everybody Loves Diamonds was also released, based on the heist masterminded by Leonardo Notarbartolo.